Welcome to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. Like any good marriage, we will debate, evaluate, and sometimes quarrel about how privacy and security impact business in the 21st century.
Hi, Jody Daniels here. I'm the founder and CEO of Clover Advisors, a certified women's privacy consultancy. I'm a privacy consultant and certified informational privacy professional, providing practical privacy advice to overwhelmed companies.
Hi, I am Justin Daniels. I am a shareholder and corporate M&A and tech transaction lawyer at the law firm Baker Donaldson, advising companies in the development and scaling of technology. Since data is critical to every transaction, I help clients make informed business decisions while managing data privacy and cybersecurity risk, and when needed, I lead the legal cyber data breach response brigade.
And this episode is brought to you by Red Clover Advisors. We help companies to comply with data privacy laws and establish customer trust so that they can grow and nurture integrity. We work with companies in a variety of fields, including technology, e-commerce, professional services, and digital media. In short, we use data privacy to transform the way companies do business. Together, we're creating a future where there's greater trust between companies and consumers. To learn more and to check out our best-selling book, Data Reimagined, Building Trust One Bite at a Time, visit redcloveradvisors.com. So this is our first podcast recording since our vacation, and I'm all confused. I was trying to share screens instead of pressing the record button. I had to remember how to plug in our mics. Anyone listening, if you remember what it's like to come back from vacation, maybe that's you. Maybe you're catching up while you're on vacation. We are right there with you.
Yes, we won't delve into all of the personal information that was collected about us on the cruise ship.
No, but it was fun because as a good privacy person and what many others, of course, do on their vacation, when you're traveling, you look for all the differences. I liked getting off. And when we were in Italy and seeing the huge screen that talked all about my personal information, how it was being collected, or when you would go to any gelato or restaurant shop, you could see their cookies and their privacy notice. I found that fun and exciting.
And whichever guest wants to find us on LinkedIn and guess how many gelato shops we went to, there'll be a free gift waiting for you.
There's not enough gelato.
Anyway, well, we have a great guest today, and I would like to introduce her, and it is Lexi Lutz, who is currently the Senior Corporate Counsel at Nordstrom, where she advises the company on all things related to privacy, cybersecurity, and AI from a legal perspective. Prior to Nordstrom, Lexi worked for a large national hotel brand and an international food service company. Lexi, how are you today?
Yes. Hi, Justin and Jody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here with y'all today.
Well, we are excited to have you, and we also really love Nordstrom. So let's get started like we do all the time, which is help us understand a little bit about your career evolution to where you are today.
Yes, absolutely. So I started out working at a law firm, but full transparency, I knew early on, even in law school, that I wanted to be in-house. I had interned both in-house at a law firm, externed for a judge, and it was very apparent that in-house is really where I wanted to be. I loved being a part of a company and a cohesive team and being able to see from the beginning to end the company achieve its goals. So I did work at a small firm for a year, doing mostly IP and some business litigation. And then when an opportunity presented itself, I switched over to a food service company where I focused primarily on employment law. Was there for a couple years, and then I had an opportunity to become more of a generalist at a hotel company. So I was there for 5 years, and I focused on employment, was a big part of it, but this was around the time that the CCPA became effective. So I was kind of the bottom man on the totem pole, and they said, "Who wants to take privacy?" I raised my hand and absolutely fell in love with it, which is why I'm talking to you today. And then the opportunity for Nordstrom opened up because I was kind of a Jill of all trades at my previous role. I don't want to say stunted my growth, but it didn't really give me the ability to delve into privacy as much as I wanted. So being able to really focus on it in a full-time role was more what I was looking for. So that's exactly what Nordstrom was offering. And it just had been a company I've admired pretty much since I can remember. So I was thrilled for the opportunity.
As a shopper, I admire Nordstrom as well. Anyone learning, try and figure out customer service, you definitely should follow and pay attention to what Nordstrom does.
Yeah.
A plus.
And Jody is tough
I am.
on those who don't give good customer service. Yes, I notice you give your own personal counsel low marks for responsiveness.
Depends on the day.
So, Lexi, with a lot of your background in retail, and retailers are on the forefront of data collection and marketing to people. I get my Nordstrom emails as well as others. Can you talk to us a little bit about how have retail privacy programs evolved in the last several years with the proliferation of so many state privacy laws?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. Yeah, I'm pretty sure now we're at around 19 state privacy laws. I could be more or less one or two off, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a huge issue because the way that data looks now from a business to consumer collection perspective is completely different than it looked just a few years ago. So I think, the best way for retailers to approach it at this point is I think a lot of decisions need to be made about what kind of approach do retailers want to take. And obviously, that's all going to depend on how large the company is, how many resources they have, whether or not they operate in certain states that have maybe more strict laws versus other states. I think there are decisions to be made about, do you want to go state by state? Do you want to go kind of a more comprehensive approach where you pick the strictest law and then take that interpretation and have it apply to all the states that have laws now that we're almost half the states and doesn't seem like the federal law is going anywhere at this point. So I think there have to be decisions that have to be made, and you have to identify kind of who those stakeholders are that need to make those decisions. And then obviously be transparent with your consumers and your customers about what data is being collected, what's being shared, who has access to it, whether it's being sold, and exactly what it's being used for.
Lexi, what departments do you find tend to be part of those conversations?
Yes. So typically, in any retail, you're going to have marketing be a part of it. And Jody, I know that you are passionate about marketing. So so definitely marketing. The technology team, really anything that touches technology is going to have some type of data, whether it might not be personal information, but it might be company confidential information integrated into it, and definitely. Honestly, even litigation as well, because that has to deal with a lot of the company confidential information, a lot of times personal information. And then lastly, a big one of my kind of quote unquote internal clients is employment, because there you have not only personal information, but also sometimes medical information, because you're dealing with workers' comp, you're dealing with, health benefits, things like that.
I like that you emphasize the litigation piece. I think that's an area that a lot of people might forget could have personal information. So thank you for adding that. This morning, I got in my email from a software company about their sub-processor list. And nowadays, with so many privacy laws, people are starting to pay much closer attention to third parties and the third-party vendor. So from your perspective, how do you think the new privacy laws have impacted diligence and the contractual requirements when companies are working with these third parties, because those third parties might need access to the personal information?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the requirements that are coming out in these privacy laws, even the kind of ones that are quote unquote considered less consumer friendly or more business friendly, do have these requirements for ensuring that contractual obligations that between a vendor and and a customer also apply to the sub-processors. And so frankly, for companies, I think it's a little bit irritating because like any new compliance or law is that you have to change your operations, can be a little bit a sore point or a pain in the side. But as far as from a consumer perspective, I actually think it's great. I think that a lot of times companies prior to these laws being in place maybe didn't do as much due diligence or weren't as concerned maybe about the information and where the information that they were collecting was going. Not to say that they didn't care, but a lot of times if you are contracting with like a well-known company, it could be that, oh, well, their reputation speaks for itself. We're sure that their data is fine. And then come to find there's a breach and all heck breaks loose. So I think it's great. And as far as what companies and retail companies specifically should do with respect to those third-party contracts is just understand that these laws are really just ensuring that back to the customer trust, right? It all goes back to customer trust. And okay, the customer is trusting you with this information, whether that's because you're Nordstrom and everyone knows that Nordstrom has great customer service, or maybe it's because you're just a large retail company that people know your name, so they assume that their data is safe. But when it comes to the third party, they're not necessarily consenting to hand that information over to them. So you need to make sure that you maintain as much control over that information as you can, which is why you need to ensure that those contractual obligations flow down to not only the processors of that information, but also the sub-processors. One analogy that I think about often, and I guess it's because I worked at a hotel company for 5 years, but when you check into a hotel and you put a security deposit down and it's just your name on the room, but then you have a friend come visit you, right? And then your friend breaks a lamp. And you can't just point the finger at your friend and say, well, it's their fault, they're liable for that. Because the hotel entrusted you with the room, with the lamp. And, you can't just expect that to automatically for the liability to shift just because it was something that your friend did. So obviously, probably you wouldn't have to enter into a contract with your friend who came to your hotel room. But that's just kind of the analogy that I think of, is that you can't just automatically shift the burden. You need to make sure that whoever is in control of the information, and if it's being passed along, that you fully understand where the information's going, what is being done with it, and that proper controls are in place. And then if there were a breach, kind of where does the liability shift to?
When I hear Lexi talk about a hotel and I think about data, I think of Hotel California when it comes to your data. You might be able to check out, but your data never leaves.
I can see another song coming.
It could.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lexi, as you talked to in your intro, you have to deal with privacy stuff, but you also have to deal with cybersecurity stuff. And last December, a new law came on the cyber landscape from the SEC, which deals with public companies of all stripes. And I would love to get your perspective on how, from a retailer's perspective, all the different retailers you might have to comply, how does the SEC cyber rules start to change the kinds of security requirements that retailers may pass on to their third-party vendors? And how has it changed your expectations for how they're going to secure such data? Because now a third-party data breach, if it's material, could require the publicly traded company to have to report to the SEC.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So from my perspective, it all just goes back to the control that I was just talking about with respect to, the SEC requirements. Obviously, hopefully vendors should know that if they have a publicly traded company that they are doing business with, that there's probably going to be higher expectations as far as, not only due diligence, but also just general security requirements by that vendor. And honestly, I mean, again, this is another thing that is probably annoying for companies. I think it's good. And with respect to vendors, it seems like, a lot of times they just kind of agree to whatever the customer wants. But now that there are going to be stricter requirements. For example, specific information that needs to be provided that the company will likely want to pass along to the SEC, or at least provide it to whoever is preparing the form to provide to the government to essentially report if there is a data breach. I think, that's probably more a burden on the third parties, just to make sure that they understand what happens if there is a breach. But yeah, I mean, as far as for the retail company, as the retail company, I think I would suggest just ensuring that all contracts are up to date, that all the relevant information that would be required if there is a breach, so that you can promptly investigate it, just be readily available. And if there are any vendors who you're having issues with for filling out the form, or completing what you need to complete, or getting the certifications that you're requiring, to maybe rethink that. Obviously, try to be as flexible as you can, but it is the SEC role is it's nothing to be taken lightly. And I know we haven't seen much case law on it yet, so it's difficult to kind of see how it's going to play out in the long run. But I think probably just err on the side of taking as many precautions as you can with your third parties, and just having a comprehensive approach and holding everyone to the same standard.
That's interesting, Lexi, because two initial thoughts I have around the SEC law with what we've seen is, number one, publicly traded companies, even if they're not sure if it's material, they're tending to err on the side of disclosure. But in another maybe unintended consequence, especially with the prosecution of the Uber CISO, I think publicly traded companies are going to have a harder time getting chief information security officers to take the job in light of the SEC rule and where some of the prosecutions have gone.
Yes. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that it kind of leaves companies, and especially CISOs, in a little bit of a rock and a hard place, because you want to be as transparent as possible, but then if your CISO is now potentially being personally held liable, I feel like there's going to be a lot of internal conflict in order to determine kind of, okay, what are we defining as material? And if we're the SEC playing Monday morning quarterback, and we find out about this, is this something that we're going to look back at and say, oh, that's something they should have reported? So I feel like it's kind of a vicious cycle at this point. SEC kind of put everyone in a bit of a harder position than planned.
Well, switching gears to the third leg of all the pieces that you focus on, privacy, security, and AI, I'd love to hear, how do you think retailers are thinking about incorporating AI from the consumer experience on a website or in a store?
Yes. So anytime I think about AI and retail, are y'all familiar with the movie Clueless?
I am.
Yeah. So the very first scene.
Hold on, I have to ask. Are you familiar with the movie Clueless?
I'm familiar with the movie.
All right, carry on.
Yes, 90s classic, Alicia Silverstone. Yes, so I kind of think when I go to AI and retail, the very first scene, I think it's like in the opening credits, maybe, when she's picking out her outfit for school, and she picks out her iconic kind of yellow plaid outfit, and she has this very 90s kind of Macintosh-esque computer, and it's kind of sorting through her closet, and then it matches the two outfits, and like it has like a match green, and then she goes and gets it. That is like I remember when I was younger watching that and just being so enthralled. Like, I wish my closet had something like that. Not that my closet is anywhere near the size of Alicia Silverstone's in that movie. But I think it comes down to really the main things are personalized customer experiences, and also just general assistance and efficiency. So first, going to kind of the personalized customer experiences. Jody, I'd love to hear from you that you think Nordstrom has great customer service. That's something that, even with AI coming into play. I don't foresee Nordstrom or really any retail company sacrificing their customer service as far as from a human perspective, because there are certain things that you definitely need humans for. So, example would be opinions on how does this look, or how is this supposed to fit on my body, and human touch, and helping someone zip up their dress, or things like that. But as far as personalization, from a digital perspective, there are ways in order to look at a customer's, for example, purchase history, search history, where AI can be definitely beneficial to say, okay, this is what this person likes. This is what this person has purchased in the past. We see their behavior, we see their preferences, and it makes that personalization a little bit easier. This isn't anything necessarily new, but I think there are opportunities to personalize things even more. If someone is searching for an outfit to eat gelato in Italy in June, what kind of outfit would that be? So just a little more personalized, a little more specific, and the ability to kind of leverage the data that we already have on individuals based on their purchase history, but then also tailoring it to product suggestions that the person would appreciate, and then hopefully buy. And then the other part is efficiency. Again, a lot of people think, well, AI might take the human aspect out of customer service. Frankly, there are some questions that customers just want to know the answer. Where's my package? That could be something the AI could just help to say, oh, okay, we can track it, instead of having a human go on and enter, whatever the order number, and trying to make that more efficient so that the humans can be utilized for those more, creative, strategic tasks that humans honestly are going to be more useful for, and then also more helpful for.
Yeah, right now I would really like a human on 2 retailers who have promised packages and they are not here. They are days behind. My favorite one is where the email says it's delivered and then it says, well, it could say delivered even if it isn't delivered. And you have to wait 3 days before you're allowed to complain. That's one retailer right now. But I digress. I look forward to the opportunity to be able to say, I'm looking for this. Find me this kind of dress for this kind of occasion. And then poof, it comes. And you kind of have that on a website where you can pick, I'm a guest at a wedding, and it will give it to you, but you still have to kind of sort. I'm excited for the day where I can just speak and then poof, it's here. I'm going to be excited about that. And then I want the human to be able to help sort through all
that. Exactly.
What's the combination AI shopper plus human person?
Yes, that's what I want. Okay.
Well, Lexi, do you have a best privacy or security tip you'd like to share with our audience?
Yes. So I have a couple. My first one is, I know that a lot of people get really bogged down with emails, marketing emails, things like that. And I don't do this myself, but I've heard people do it. And I don't know if someone has shared this as a tip before, but my first one is, if you can have a different email for shopping, for really anything that you use for shopping online. And that way that can reduce the amount of potential marketing emails in your email. That one, I think I might try to start utilizing, because I did hear someone talk about it the other day. And then my other one, actually, Jody, I got the Red Clover Advisors newsletter earlier, and it was talking about how the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, came out with a guidance regarding, what really matters in a privacy policy, or do they matter at all? All of us 3 here agree that privacy policies, of course, matter, but I would guess that majority of the population don't really care if they get an email saying we updated our terms, it automatically goes to the trash or it's just ignored and disregarded completely. So I think, so I was reading that article that, you sent in your newsletter, and then that was published by the ICO. And I think if you are a consumer and you have a million things to do, you get something that says we've updated the terms to our privacy policy. If you have 60 seconds, click on it and just go down to information being collected and why they're collecting it, whether they're selling it or sharing it. Like, I feel like even just knowing that information will at least, and it might not change whether you use the product or not. A lot of us don't really have a choice. For example, like on our phones, Apple's terms, like we can't just reject it and then we don't have a phone. But there are certain companies where you don't maybe necessarily have to use that company if they aren't handling your data in the way that you want to, or if they're collecting more information than you feel comfortable with, or sharing it with maybe a third party that you don't feel comfortable with them sharing it with. Like I said, there's a lot of information in the privacy policy that maybe consumers don't care about, even though it's required by law to be in there. But I think if you're a consumer and you really don't care about privacy policies or privacy notices, please just figure out what is actually being collected, especially if it's like, maybe if not a retail company, but especially if it's like a health device or app, or something that contains, more sensitive information, just to give you edification of the information of you that is out there. And then also give you consumer choice. Maybe you don't feel comfortable with that. And just taking kind of 60 seconds, do like a control find on your phone or your computer if you're looking at it from a screen, and just do a search of collection and it should be there. And I feel like that would at least give people a peace of mind knowing what is out there versus just, putting your head in the sand and ignoring what information is being collected about you and what's being done with it, who it's being shared with, et cetera.
Those are excellent tips. And thank you also for following the newsletter. That particular newsletter was a LinkedIn newsletter today. I thought it was a really cool story. Now, Lexi, when you are not advising on privacy, security, or AI, what do you like to do for fun?
Yeah, so I like to say that law school kind of stole all my hobbies because I was so immersed in it. A lot of, I think work is fun, but a lot of reading and writing because that's kind of what I do already. But I like to do it personally as well. And then this summer and last summer too, I've been very intentionally focused on tennis and golf. I used to play tennis when I was younger and then dropped it. Golf I had never really played, but I've been trying. I've taken a handful of lessons, but this summer I've been very intentional about it. Doesn't help how hot it is because I feel like I'm outside for 5 minutes and I'm already like breaking a sweat. But yeah, so those. And then I also love volunteering. I'm pretty active with the American Heart Association here in Charlotte, and then also the International Association of Privacy Professionals in Charlotte. Really enjoy giving back to the community. And then I also recently started, just in my free time, not in like a professional capacity or anything, educating seniors. So in like retirement communities and assisted living homes on just very, very basic education on how to protect themselves digitally, because I know that a lot of these senior citizens have people that really care about them and probably already just know how to navigate the online atmosphere. But unfortunately, I feel like a lot of the seniors, maybe they don't bring it up to the people who care about them, or the people that care about them just assume that they're not being exposed to these kind of things because maybe they're not as active online. But I know that when my grandmother lived in Charlotte, she actually lived in one of the assisted living communities that I've spoken at, and had conversations with the folks about it. She had stuff come up that I was just like, well, you really didn't have to respond to that email, or you really didn't have to click on that link. If you just kind of knew the basics of, not only phishing and scams and things like that, but also just like, what's a cookie? Like, they don't know what a cookie is. So I do that sometimes in my free time, just because I'm a little bit of a freak, but I also love giving back to the community. And selfishly, I just really like hanging out with senior citizens because I feel like they have just great stories and great life advice that I can't really find anywhere else.
That is true. But I really love what you just shared. Imagine if every privacy pro spent 1 hour a year, how many people that could impact. And then if they did it twice a year, what would happen? I love that idea. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yes, and I'm happy to share any of my materials if anyone is feeling philanthropic.
I really, I have some thoughts on that of how we can try and spread the goodness that you're doing here. So thank you. And Lexi, if people would like to connect with you, where should they go?
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Well, Lexi, thank you so much for coming today and sharing more about privacy, security, and AI in the retail space, and also how we can all educate the seniors in our community.
Yes, thank you. This was such a great conversation. I'm honored to have been a guest on y'all's podcast, and looking forward to listening to more episodes.
Thank you again.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks for listening to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check us out on LinkedIn. See you next time.